Right. Okay, Stefan's just told us we're in a very special place from railway heritage point of view. And indeed we are. This is one of the photographs that was taken by many British railway enthusiasts who came here to FozTua to photograph the railways here. This one, 15th of April 1971. Bought that on eBay. I paid some money for it.
Snow, is it snow? It should be.
No.
That's left.
Yes.
Yeah, well maybe.
Yes.
Okay, Eduardo asked us to talk about conflict. I thought, well, conflict. Conflict usually comes with the inception, with the building, with the birth of a railway, but not in Britain generally. Mostly it was a great celebration and new railways were opened. People were very happy about it because it brought cheap travel to the masses. It was something to be celebrated, it was something to make a great fuss about, opening a new station. The local populace would turn out with all the dignitaries. Conflict, however, comes about in 1963 or thereabouts, as we've heard from Marta earlier so eloquently. Dr. Beeching was charged by the government with cutting the railway network in Britain, a position that Britain found itself in 50 years ago nearly, just the same position that Portugal actually now finds itself in, cutting the railways. Now, normally that would lead to great conflict and people wanting to get their railways back, fighting the government. But that really wasn't possible in the 1960s. The people could not fight the government to reinstate their railway lines. But what did happen is that people, typically in Britain, would ignore what the government said. And so we have situations like this. 4 16-year-old schoolboys who saw a list published in Railway Modeller magazine that said there were going to be 70 steam engines saved for preservation. But it didn't include very many from the Great Western Railway, and it didn't include their favourite locomotive. So they themselves decided they would write a letter to the Railway Modeller magazine to say that they would like to set up a fund to buy one of these locomotives that they wanted to save. One of them had a typewriter, so he typed the letter and sent it off to the Railway Modeller magazine. And 50 odd years later, we come to a situation where the fruit of their work on that day back in 1961 comes to full fruition with the Didcot Railway Centre for the Great Western Society, with lots of steam locomotives, a whole museum in one place, built entirely by 4 16-year-old schoolboys. And they weren't an isolated incident in Britain. We have over 150 preserved railways, all as a result of individual people deciding that they were not going to take it lying down, that their railways were not going to be closed, and that their heritage was not going to be removed from them. So they set about doing things like buying track, buying locomotives, scrap locomotives, and building them. These 4, very old now, founded the Bluebell Railway in Sussex. The Bluebell Railway was the first standard gauge railway to be preserved and operated as a preserved railway. Based on the old London and Brighton and South Coast Railway, it has fabulous locomotives. That one more than 100 years old. It links up into the main line, that's where they are in Sussex. They have several miles of track, and they link into the main national railway network. They had to replace the track that was removed by British Railways when they closed the line originally. So people would go out as volunteers at the weekends and during holiday times to lay the tracks, physically lay the tracks, and join into the National Railway Network. Doing so means that that preserved railway can now get steam-hauled excursions off the main railway network. And we have a whole industry in Britain of steam-hauled railway excursions where railway enthusiasts who want to travel on steam-hauled trains will pay large amounts of money for tickets, typically €100 or more, for a ride on a steam train over standard main lines. Now that's a particular locomotive called Tornado. It looks like an old one, but it's actually a new one. I'll come on to that again in a minute. Now, as businesses, they do things like operate weddings, nearly £5,000 for a wedding at the Bluebell Railway. They operate dining excursions. You can go and have afternoon tea for £39 a head, whilst you drive up and down the Sussex countryside in great splendour. Now, the collection of railway locomotives that they have is fantastic, but the use of railway locomotives such as the A1 Pacific Tornado, which was built in 2008, specifically to run steam-hauled excursions over modern national railway lines at speeds of up to and above 80 miles an hour, so that's well over 120 odd kilometres an hour, fully equipped with full modern safety kit, full electronics and all the rest of it, but it was a brand new locomotive built by the skill of people who are part of this industry. They developed the engineering skills, they recreated the craft skills necessary. It cost less than half the price of a new diesel locomotive. It's a fantastic bargain and very profitable. And that's not the only railway. What about the Swanage Railway? Now this is down in Dorset and runs between the port of Swanage and then up to Wareham. It was closed in 1971 as a result of the, I've gone somewhere. Closed in 1971 as a result of British Railways wanting to shut the line down because they said it wasn't economic. They pulled up all the track. So when the local people started to try and complain about it, because they wanted their railway service, they were unable to do so. The track had been removed. However, the people of Swanage and the railway enthusiasts started to work on building a steam railway. And they built this back by putting the track back, gathering locomotives together, many of them privately owned, to operate the Swanage Railway. And today they have a thriving business operating on this line. Sometimes with electric rolling stock like this one, that's a 4 VEP unit. I used to work that absolutely same unit up and down between Portsmouth and London when I worked on the railways as a teenager. So fabulous for me to see that in a preserved railway collection. They operate plenty of steam locomotives, running through fantastic countryside and making the most of all the opportunities that are there. Wonderful locomotives and a great collection. A lot of railway theatre, a lot of railway business going on for people to see. Not only steam, but also diesels. Class 33 Crompton locomotive, again, that's another one that I have personally worked. So I remember being up in the cab of that, belting up the lines, fantastic feeling, wonderful stuff. More steam engines, diesel shunting engines. Again, a standard British Rail 350 shunter. And people come to see these. They come to have weddings at the stations. That's a wedding that I happened to come across at Swanage Railway Station. People like to see the engines moving. They like to see them doing something. They like to see them in steam. And they like to have a cup of tea and go to the buffet car and have something to eat. And that's all part of the experience. It's all part of the theatre. That drama that surrounds all railway activity. And really, that's what one's selling for the most part as a tourist business. But the Swanage Railway is also very interesting because they've recently been awarded a contract by government in February 2013 to start planning towards running a permanent, proper transport service for the local people of Swanage into the British mainline network. So a preserved railway society is now being commissioned by the government to provide proper transport facilities for the local population on a line that the government closed 50 odd years before, or 30 years before. Now, there are other ways of dealing with heritage. This is the Amberley Museum. It's in a chalk pit in Sussex. It was originally a lime works where they produced mortar for building. But it's now an industrial museum with a lot of heritage in it. Small railways, and things like displays of old television sets or radios. None of it is shiny, none of it is well presented, but it's things that are there as a result of enthusiasts' great passion for what they're doing. They drive people around the site on old buses, they have old garages and things like that. They even have a display of postal telecommunications equipment paid for by O2, British Telecom. They have a great collection of industrial engines. They also have some tank engines, not necessarily in the best of conditions, it has to be said, but it doesn't matter. It's part of the heritage that they're showing, that they're able to show within the environment of their particular place, and to show people a whole mixture of different things from a past transport environment, including buses. They also have a museum dedicated to the distribution of domestic electricity, paid for by EDF, Électricité de France, the national French power producer, showing things like bits of kit from power stations and, transmission equipment around the countryside. All there on the site, people riding around on industrial locomotives, sometimes diesel, but always something going on, sometimes steam. A lot of things for people to see, and people flock there. And the thing about enthusiasts is that they'll come from all over the world to places. This is the National Scottish Mining Museum, where the open cast coal business uses it as part of their propaganda to say open cast coal is a jolly good thing. It's in their museum, and indeed it makes a very good case. And people come very long distances. This chap standing up here came from Bluefield, West Virginia. He'd come specifically to see that closed coal mine. He had travelled thousands of miles to be there, because he knew about coal, because he was enthusiastic about coal. And they have all sorts of things around on the site, and again, locomotives and so on, not necessarily in the best of conditions, but it doesn't matter. They have big winding engine, big steam engine in the winding house. Now, it's very important to think about these things, and from one of the things that I'm involved in is the Mary Rose, Henry VIII's warship that sank in 1545 off the Solent. And we've just opened our new museum. £35 million museum in the dockyard at Portsmouth. We were able to get a lot of publicity through this. National television news, lots of stuff going out to the press. We did lots of events. We had lots of television crews down filming this live as we pulled a great big flag off the building. Even I got in on the act with a few interviews for various television companies about my work on the counter engraving. And indeed, there's a very large piece of the counter engraving in the museum. It's the first gallery that everyone goes in to see. We were able to show people the skeletons from the crew of the Mary Rose and the reconstructions, the detailed facial reconstructions of those individuals, so that we really connect with that history, tell the story of those people. And that story reached a huge audience. It was estimated that we reached 900 million people with the launch of the museum. We got an audience on Russia Today alone of 120 million. It's big, and it's possible to do that simply by telling a story. And stories are very powerful. Stories are very important to people in their lives. This again, let's go back to some railways. This is the Watercress line in Hampshire. That's a 3 Hampshire diesel unit. Again, one of the ones that I used to work. There's me being 19-year-old at my yard. And I have to say, nothing like as elegantly... Absolutely, nothing like as elegantly dressed as Stefano. I was decidedly scruffy, I have to say. But, I'll never forget being in that very unit, heading towards a red signal at 100 kilometres an hour. We're in about 1 o'clock in the morning with my driver, and I looked over and saw the driver slumped down like that on the controls, and I thought, He's having a joke with me. He's having a joke with me. Wake up! And he did at that point, but he had gone to sleep. And we were heading towards a red signal rather quickly. I'll never forget that moment, that unit associated with me. The Watercress line runs between Alton and Alresford, near Winchester in Hampshire. They do things like dinners on board the trains. They're always sold out. They charge you £45 per adult for the fare each time. They have lots of big locomotives. And those locomotives are in steam. And I think it's worth thinking about this from Chris Scow. He said, railroad museums and tour companies may continue to keep old steam trains on hand for demonstrations, posterity or simple nostalgia. But to true rail fans, that's like seeing an animal in a zoo. It's to see the old iron horse in the wild, on the other hand, is what rail fans call live steam. That is worth a journey of thousands of miles. To see steam engines like these in China, operating freight trains, or to go and ride around on the small trains, this is the last one in China that's still operating. And it's really worth thinking that within 5 or 10 years from now, it is very unlikely that there will be any steam trains operating anywhere in the world, other than as tourist attractions. These are at the Railway Museum at Lusado. It's a lovely museum, it's got a fantastic collection, but it's static. It's not live. They are wonderful vehicles. In France, we heard last year from Michel about the train de l'Ardèche, and as a true railway enthusiast, I was down there as soon as I could last summer, a journey of 2,500 kilometres to go down to it and back home. I persuaded my wife, Cheryl, to come. She's very indulgent. And allows me to do these things. It's a fabulous railway. It's only just reopened after having been shut for some time. They've completely rebuilt the locomotives and they are absolutely gorgeous. It's a mallet loco, it's a 1 metre gauge. It's in fantastic condition. But to me, as a railway purist, one of the things they haven't quite got right is that they replaced all the rolling stock and they've used modern rolling stock. It's great as a tourist thing, but it's not a railway thing. You can go up the valley and it's a fabulous view with wonderful theatre from the trains on the turntable and everyone's interested. It's a wonderful ride. They also have some diesel rail cars. Now, railway enthusiasts do travel. I brought my wife, Cheryl, and my 2 boys over here last Christmas because that was the other time I could do. A round-trip journey for us of best part of a couple of thousand miles, but worth coming to. Worth coming to see this area, to see things in the area, to experience something of this uniqueness of the place, to experience the railway that we've been talking about for the last 3 years now, to see these stations, to look at the line, to understand something about its heritage, and to see what's sitting there, the potential that's sitting just down the road, sitting there doing not a lot, when it could be on there. And then you look down the valley towards the dam, and some of the track's been pulled up, and that's such a shame. Because this place is live, the steam is live, it could be live. People used to travel here from a long way away. This one taken by a chap called Alan Orchard, just down the road from here.
Just after
that's
the car.
literally with
you can see Douro line.
Absolutely.
And line.
Taken in 1968. A railway enthusiast who came here, who travelled a very difficult journey to get here to see something of real steam. And you think about what else this place has got to offer. Look, Great food, great scenery, steam trains and port wine. Does life get any better than that?